Y'all gotta start making this harder. Considering that this is probably my 50th time responding to this talking point, I'm about to eat through your shit with maximum efficiency. Level 1, let me give you an analogy. Let's say me and you are running in a race. While we're running in said race, I'm simultaneously shooting you in the leg, all but ensuring you won't catch up to me. Not only this, you can't really even start the race until I release you from the starting line, or if you risk making a dangerous escape from the starting line when I'm not paying attention. And oh yeah, I forgot, I control this race, so even if you do make it off the starting line, I'll be making rules that ensure that you don't catch up to me. Now let's say, 99.5% of the time, I'm the one who's doing the shooting of the legs. But some of your teammates have made it off the starting line either through me releasing them or them escaping. And after managing to dodge some of the bullets, they decide, hey, I want to do some leg shooting too. So then let's say about 0.5% of the time, one of your teammates ends up shooting you in the leg. Would I then be some enlightened genius to look you dead in your face and go, huh, cat's got your tongue? What's your excuse? Your teammate also shot you in the leg. For those participating at home, the correct answer was no, because not only does whoever shot you not change the effects of getting shot in the leg, we're still running on my game by my rules, and I was the one shooting you 99.5% of the time. So no shit, I would have benefits considering it's my game and I was the one doing the shooting of you. And you, no matter whether it was me 99.5% of the time or your teammate 0.5% of the time, still have to live with the effects of being shot in the damn leg. But JJ, why does this analogy matter? When you realize that in 1830, black people owned just under 13,000 of the over 2 million slaves in the U.S. Or, a whopping 0.6%. And even if I take the high estimate of 20,000 slaves owned by black people by 1860, out of the 3.9 million slaves in the country, that's still a whopping 0.5%. Meaning the vast majority of the time, white people were doing the shooting, if you will. Level 2, you casually forgot about Jim Crow, sharecropping, or the rules, if you will. Level 3, the color of the person who owns you, or shot you in this case, doesn't change the fact that being shot in the leg greatly hinders your ability to run. And level 4, all this information is talking about freed African Americans who owned black slaves. Freed from what? It's almost as if the systems of this race or, country was built against you and your teammate. I didn't even want to talk for this long, but it's amazing how much stupidity you can unleash in 13 seconds. For this talking point, I'm about to eat through your shit with maximum efficiency. You gotta be so hostile with your vulgar language, and you said this is what you're about 30th time mentioning this. And people who remember me on this app, this is my first account. So you're telling me you spoke for 3 minutes and said nothing. Let's go attempted point by attempted point. Firstly, my language. Sorry, I don't give a fuck. Secondly, when I said it was my 50th time addressing it, I didn't mean that you in particular said it 50 times. I meant that people like you have been using the same African Americans own slaves too while devoiding it of context in order to prove fucking nothing, really. But what it does do is give reason to racist people to not believe in systemic racism because, look, they did it to themselves, too. Ooh, you made multiple videos. So what? I want facts. Well, let's carry into it. Level 1, let me give you an analogy. Let's say me and you are running in a race. While we're running in said race, I'm simultaneously shooting you in the leg, all but Oh, JJ, that analogy sucks. You know why that analogy sucks? Because now everybody ran the same race. Did you not realize that we actually have Confederate states and we actually have free states? The big difference. What the? Your argument that my analogy doesn't make sense because every state didn't have slavery, thus everyone didn't run the same race, quickly falls apart when you realize that every state did have slavery. In fact, slavery wouldn't be officially abolished up north until at least 1804. So with the first enslaved Africans arriving in the Americas as early as 1526 to as late as 1619, that means that being generous, slavery was a legal institution taking place in what would become the United States for at least 185 years before the North abolished it. Then it'd take another 60 plus years for the South to follow suit. And even if I grant you the African Americans who never had to partake in slavery or the race in my analogy, even their material conditions and anti-black discrimination they faced will have been a product of slavery, considering that was our introduction to the fucking continent. Thus meaning that in one way or another, we were all running the same race. 0 for 3. Next. Then you go on to say something that kind of really isn't true. When you realize that in 1830, black people owned just under 13,000 of the over 2 million slaves in the U.S. Or, a whopping 0.6%. 0.5% of the population who owned slaves were black. You also didn't mention the population of white individuals who actually owned slaves during that time. So you're actually implying that 99.5% of the population who were white owned slaves, which is just not true. Jesus Christ. Rewatch the video. When you realize that in 1830, black people owned just under 13,000 of the over 2 million slaves in the U.S. Or, a whopping 0.6%. For those watching at home, you just heard me say that black people owned a whopping 0.6% of the slave population. You saw him watch me say that. And then you watched as he miraculously changed that to me saying that 99.5% of white people owned a slave. Buddy, oh my God. There were almost 14 million white males in the country by 1860. If 99.5% of white males alone owned just one black person, that's over 13 million slaves in the country. But I literally told you in my video that there were 3.9 million slaves in the US by 1860. So that couldn't have been what I meant. We're only like 30 seconds in, which means that the rest of your 3-minute video is you hammering away at a point that I never made because you couldn't listen to a sentence and then recite it back to me. Do me a favor, shorty, don't respond next time.